Chapter 19 A Chance Encounter From the book In Love with the World by Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche. After about 10 days, an Asian man came into the park. He was quite tall with dark yellow skin, maybe in his 40s, wearing a white cotton button-down shirt, khaki pants, and sandals. I had no idea of his nationality, but I noticed that he sat down, then stood up, sat down, stood up again and again. He appeared the next day, again, sitting, standing, sitting again. After a few days, he approached and asked, "Do you speak English?" I said, "Yes." "Are you a monk?" "Yes." "Are you meditating?" "Yes." He said, "I came here to meditate, but I'm finding it very hard, and I cannot sit down for long. Do you mind if I ask your advice?" He explained that he had been taught anapanasati. In Sanskrit, sati means mindfulness, and anapani means breath. Mindfulness of breathing. He had been trying to place his mind on his breath, on the sensations of the stomach rising and falling, and on air passing through the nostrils. He had been taught this practice by a Buddhist teacher in the Theravada or early Buddhist tradition of Southeast Asia. But his mind grew restless. He could not stop thoughts from flooding in, and his mind often chased after those thoughts, and he could not stay with the sensation of breathing. I explained that there was no need to get rid of thoughts. Do not make thoughts your enemy, I told him. The problem is not thoughts. It is in following them. When you feel yourself moving toward an image, an idea, a past event, a plan for later or tomorrow, that is what you have to watch out for, not the thoughts themselves. When you get lost in thought or hooked dry by the story, then bring the mind to the breath as a way of coming back to yourself. Then I explained to him, if you forget awareness, then you are no longer meditating. The breath is like an anchor that helps you to stay connected to awareness. As long as you do not forget awareness, then you can allow thoughts to come in and out like a swinging door. No problem. He told me, when I try to calm the mind, the thoughts multiply. This is a common experience. I explained that when we first become aware of thoughts, they seem to multiply, but there aren't really more thoughts than before. We are just more aware of them. Learning to meditate can express a yearning for freedom, a genuine aspiration to transcend the grasping ego. But we are also frightened by this. So, our conventional mind has tricky ways of fending off this quest. I told the Asian man, what you describe is exactly right. He looked perplexed, not sure if this was a joke at his expense. It was not. The first thing that happens when we begin to meditate, I told him, is that we learn just how crazy our minds are. Many of us take that as a sign that we're not cut out for meditation, Actually, it is just the opposite. It's the first sign that we are becoming familiar with our own mind. It's a great insight. You will be fine, I told him. I meant that. This man had traveled to this sacred site, and each day, in sweltering temperatures, he had come to the park to practice, to try. That's all any of us can do. One piece of advice, I told him: don't conclude that your mind is significantly different from anyone else. We all have this monkey mind. Once we put the monkey under the magnifying glass, the mind commonly appears crazier than ever. It's not. You're just allowing yourself to become acquainted with how crazy it has always been. And this is great news. The fact is that the mind makes thoughts. The lungs breathe. The dynamic element of air, sometimes called wind, within the body, keeps thoughts in motion. We can no more stop thoughts than we can stop the wind or stop our breath. The man described himself as a very busy guy who had taken time away from an important position in his company in order to meditate and find inner peace. He was staying at the only expensive hotel in the small town. This trip was using up all of his annual vacation time, and he felt defeated. He was at war with his thoughts, fighting them and failing. I told him, it's amazing that you chose to spend your vacation this way, and you are learning exactly the way everyone does, with misconceptions and frustrations, and trying again. There is no other way. Then I'll explain that his frustrations demonstrated a positive sign. They indicated that thoughts had already been recognized as the cause of distress and dissatisfaction. Just think of how common it is to never stop blaming circumstances and never even consider looking at one's mind to resolve problems. Then I said, everything that we want is already within us. We need to relax and allow our innate wisdom to come forth. 2 days later, the Asian man approached me again. He had found the advice very helpful and wanted to thank me. It had been a big relief to learn that meditation did not require getting rid of thoughts. He was able to sit with less agitation. His mind still wandered away from the breath often, and although he was not trying to push thoughts away, he was still troubled by them, and by one in particular. He had difficulty accepting that wisdom was inherent, and that enlightened qualities needed to be revealed, not created. His business depended on bottom lines, goals, and productivity. Striving for gains had defined his life. I have always feared that becoming more accepting would make me passive. I do not want to be a passive person, he said. Acceptance and passivity have nothing to do with each other, I explained. It's important to make this distinction, especially where associations with nonviolence, peace, passive resistance, and passivity have gotten all mixed up. Even some Buddhists think we're supposed to lie down on the train tracks in the face of danger. True acceptance requires an open mind, one willing to investigate whatever arises. It can never be programmed. Quite the opposite, for it necessitates meeting the world with freedom and maintaining a fresh mind that shows up for all situations. It requires trusting in uncertainty. Acceptance allows for genuine discernment to arise from wisdom, rather than having our decisions limited by rote, unquestioning patterns. The man explained that even though his work stressed him out, it provided purpose and accomplishment. Since first learning anapanasati, he had tried to figure out how to make meditation more active, more productive, more of an asset to his work. This man's interest in using meditation to advance his career reminded me of an exchange that took place in Taiwan between a Chinese professor of economics and a close friend of mine who had been trained in the traditional curriculum of a Tibetan scholar monk. The professor had asked, "Is Buddhism productive or creative?" This question had left my friend dumbfounded. He barely understood the words and had never related them to Dharma. Still, he wished to place his tradition in the best light. Finally, he concluded that Buddhism was creative. The professor said, "Actually, productivity will not help anyone. If you concern your efforts with productivity, you get stuck. Conditions change all the time. That's certain. If you get attached to the fixed goals of productivity, you cannot stay open and flexible. You cannot adapt and innovate. Rigidity sets in, and you cannot move the goalposts, even when they no longer serve your purpose." Soon enough, the next new thing, method, product, strategy, has arrived, and your way of functioning is obsolete and ineffective. By the time you realize you are going down, it's too late. My friend had a lot of trouble sleeping at night. He continued thinking about the discussion, and a few days later he asked to meet with the professor again. This time he told the professor, "I am very sorry. I gave the wrong answer. Buddhism is much more concerned with creativity." He explained that he had arrived at his conclusion by investigating uncertainty. You could never be certain of anything. All things are impermanent. Death comes without warning. We can die at any moment. And even though we may relate to this information as an inconvenient fact, we never actually lose sight of it. However hard we might try, impermanence is the bridge between birth and death, which makes every step uncertain. To remain open and responsive requires flexibility. That flexibility, explained the monk to the professor, is creative. We are always taking a chance, whether we acknowledge it or not, precisely because there is no certainty. And to accept impermanence and uncertainty means risking failure. Preoccupation with certainty indicates a fixed idea of success. Creativity means staying open to change and risking failure. I told the Asian man, "Do not worry about succeeding or failing. You do not know the size or the measurements of your mind, so you cannot measure its so-called progress. Taking the focus off the goal doesn't mean giving up. It means staying receptive to the present. It means allowing for a fresh response to what's happening and becoming more comfortable with innovation than with repeating still impersonations of your old self. Of course, your mind will stray. It will get caught, hooked. You will be distracted by sights and sounds. Your mental composure will fall apart and come together again. That's how it works. If you can accept whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, that is the best practice. We need to develop some confidence in order to know that dropping the mask is not an act of suicidal madness, but of renewal. I once watched a video of children making plaster masks of their faces from strips of newspaper dipped in flour and water. When the masks dried, they took them off and painted them in colorful designs and then reattached them to their faces with strings. The children's delight was contagious. I recall thinking, just remember to remove the masks. You added them. You can subtract them. Don't forget. The same holds true for all of us. I have been told by psychologists that personality traits of young children between the ages of 3 and 6 develop into lifelong patterns. These patterns then get reinforced by interacting with an environment that reflects and reinforces these traits. Or we could say, you build a mask and then grow into that mask. In another 10 to 15 years, you fully inhabit the mask. With collaboration from friends and family, it becomes the real you, but not quite. On some gut level, below the thinking mind, we know there is more to our being than the masks that hide our true selves. In the middle of the night, a gnawing, low-level disturbance leaves us doubting our own authenticity. But often, we just do not know what to do and end up doing nothing. The process of training the mind peels off the masks. We are not robots programmed to imitate ourselves, but we do not know how to use our creative reserves to let go of rote behaviors, even those that drive us crazy. Being defensive and uptight, lazy, irritable, or self-conscious. These behaviors are not in our DNA and do not have to continue their destructive influence. They can die before we do. We will survive the death of impersonating ourselves and of wearing masks. We will not just survive, but flourish. The Asian man had sat quietly, nodding. He looked attentive, appreciative, and gradually sad, as if it was slowly dawning on him that he might soon be saying goodbye to behaviors that he had once cherished. He thanked me, and we parted company, each returning to our own meditations. After another 2 days, the man again approached me. He asked questions about where I had learned meditation. I explained that my father had been a Buddhist master, and I had gone through traditional monastic training. I did not ask him questions. I wanted to maintain the boundaries of a solitary retreat. Although I wanted to help him in his practice, I did not wish to initiate a friendship. Yet, He seemed genuinely interested in learning about Tibetan Buddhism and asked if I could introduce him to a practice from my own tradition. It seemed that this man's main problem was trying to control thoughts, and that he was stuck with the idea that meditation was about attaining joy and clarity through non thinking. A common mistake. The essence of meditation is awareness. Joy, clarity, inner peace, these are the byproducts. But they are not the essence of meditation itself. And the more we strive for them, the more the mind constricts around ideas of what should happen. These ideas about what should happen diminish the capacity to recognize our own awareness. I decided to introduce him to thought meditation. I told him to start his meditation with the same instructions as for anapanasati. Just as you have placed your mind on your breath, now place your mind on your thoughts. Whatever comes, just watch. In the same way that you could use the breath as support for meditation, now use thoughts. Breath never stays the same for an instant, but it can be a stable support. So try to practice this way, just staying aware of your thoughts without chasing after them. Thoughts come and go, no problem. Register sounds, sensation, no problem. Take note of discomfort in your body, agitation, restlessness. It's all fine. Be with the clarity of mind, with the clarity of mere knowing, knowing without concepts, knowing without the grasping impulses of the ego self, or knowing without fixation. This connects you to your own inner reality, your inner wisdom. I suggested that he try this and then come back and tell me how it went. He left for another area of the park. About an hour later, he came back and told me, I try to watch thoughts. I cannot find them. My mind goes blank. That is the secret of thought meditation, I told him. What you are calling blank is actually open awareness. Here, there is no object of awareness, as with the breath or with thought. Awareness is aware of itself. It recognizes the spacious, knowing qualities of mind that are always present. When one looks for a thought and suddenly can't find one, in that moment there is no object, just awareness. So, it's a perfect opportunity to recognize awareness without getting hooked by an object. But you're not used to recognizing that. So you think it is blank or nothing. Then I pointed out that after the experience of the blank, he had recognized that he could not find his thoughts. This experience, I explained, is not true open awareness, but is a little more spacious than cascading thoughts. This is awareness without too much thought. If this experience of a blank mind, is dismissed as being irrelevant or unimportant, that will not be helpful. The blank mind exists within awareness. But even when we do not recognize it, it means less thinking, less mental spinning. If you can recognize that the blank mind has less thinking, then you are connecting to the quality of empty mind. And in that moment, there is clarity and luminosity. What is this luminous mind? It is the mind that experiences thoughts with awareness. In other words, when you recognize awareness, then this experience of blank or of gap becomes spacious. The Asian man saw the blank. For some people, when they watch thoughts, they can see thoughts. If you can watch thoughts, I told him, then it's like watching television. You're not in the television, you're watching it. It's like standing at the edge of the river without falling into the current. You're watching your inner television, but remaining on the outside. There is a big screen, and there are many free channels. There are only two problems. The programs are quite old, and there are a lot of reruns. So our habitual mind always repeat same and similar thoughts, but we never notice. That's what that means. Again, we decided to part and continue to meditate separately. Several hours later, the guard came around to announce that the park was closing. So just a bit of context, they are both in the Kusinaghar park, the place where the Buddha passed away. We approached the main gate at the same time, and the man again thanked me and told me that he could really feel a change in his practice, and that our discussions had made his trip more valuable than anything he had anticipated. He looked very happy, and we wished each other well. I would not be seeing him again as I was almost out of money and had already decided to move to the cremation site once I left the guest house. The man has struck me as sincere. My vows include giving anything I am asked for whenever possible, and to do this without picking and choosing. It is not about liking or approving whom you give to. Rather, it's about just giving when you can. Yet, when I returned to my room, I saw how easily I had fallen into the role of a teacher. How comforting it was to inhabit a familiar voice. I had wandered between lives for 2 weeks and then re-emerged as Mingyur Rinpoche, the Buddhist Lama, the correct monk, the dedicated teacher. I vowed to be more watchful and hoped that wearing yogi clothes would help me shed this image and identity.